There are some things I absolutely do not give a about when it comes to weight loss. And this might sound harsh, but honestly, I'm fed up. People are overcomplicating weight loss more than ever. I'm sure there are so many mixed messages all on your feed. It's leaving people confused, hungry, burnt out, and ultimately not getting results. You're stressing about rules that don't actually move the needle, while ignoring small changes that can make a huge impact. So today, we're clearing the noise. I'm gonna walk you through 10 things that I absolutely could not care less about when it comes to weight loss, and explain why they don't work and why you shouldn't be worried about them. But don't worry, it's not all doom and gloom. We're gonna also touch on some things you should be focusing on. And like I said, these are small changes and they're easier than you might expect. Welcome back to the Healthy Not Complicated podcast. If you're new here, my name's Kait. I'm a nutritionist. I specialize in blood sugar balance, insulin resistance, healthy weight loss, and doing this all naturally. If you've listened to other episodes of Healthy Not Complicated, then you already know my approach. Simple, science-backed, and sustainable. Today's episode, I'm hoping it's gonna feel freeing, but it might also be a little bit confronting. Because some of these things you might have been holding on to for years. Diet rules that made you feel guilty. Habits that you forced yourself to do out of fear. Metrics that you've been obsessing over that we're gonna talk about today might not even matter at all. I'm hoping that this episode is gonna feel like a deep exhale, like a wake-up call, but in a good way. So let's get into it. Before I dive into the first point, I quickly want to make something clear. If you feel like you can't lose weight no matter what you're doing, it's not because you're unmotivated, it's not because you lack discipline, it's definitely not because you're lazy. Trust me, I know you're trying. Most people fail because they're focusing on the wrong things. And like I said, this isn't your fault. We're getting so many mixed messages on social media every single day. Weight loss has become more of a battle between camps. Meat is good, meat is bad, only eat vegetables, only eat fruit. It is so confusing. But here's the thing, your metabolism doesn't care about ideologies, it doesn't care about perfection. You don't need to be doing every single thing right. Your diet doesn't need to be 100% pure. It cares about signals and the signals that you're sending to it on a daily basis. And that's what we're unpacking today. Number one is people avoiding cortisol spikes at all cost. And this one has been trending probably for a couple of years now. People will say, don't drink coffee first thing in the morning, it's gonna spike your cortisol. Don't drink coffee on an empty stomach. Don't do high intensity workouts. But the thing is, cortisol spikes, they're not bad. They're natural, they're healthy. We naturally go through a cortisol cycle throughout the day, and it does peak in the morning. And if we're trying to focus, if we're trying to get a lot of work done, even when we're working out, we want our cortisol to go up. This gives us energy. This gives us focus. So avoiding stress at all costs, being so afraid of cortisol spikes, no, I don't care about it. But let's break this down calmly before I get too out of hand. Like I said, cortisol is not the enemy. It's a survival hormone. And cortisol is our body's response to stress. Now, there's good stress and there's bad stress. An example of good stress is exercise. But the key here is that that's short-term stress. It's short in duration and it allows our body to become more resilient to stress in the future. So the key is, I guess, balancing your cortisol. Yeah, you don't want to be chronically stressed. You don't want your stress to be elevated all throughout the day. That's gonna increase inflammation. That's gonna cause your blood sugar to be higher. Yeah, that's not good. But acute spikes in cortisol, not a problem. Now, what I will say is that if you do have a bunch of stressors all on top of each other, if you have a stressful meeting, if you didn't get a good night's sleep the night before, and then you're pounding the coffee, this is a lot of stress and it's all building up. So pick and choose your battles. If you're doing that as a one-off, that's totally fine. But if this is something that you're doing consistently, then you might want to check in. Because cortisol definitely can be an issue. But so many people freak out about not spiking cortisol first thing in the morning, very carefully timing their workouts. A lot of women have been told to avoid high intensity workouts because of their cortisol, and that's not the solution. Yes, if you are doing high intensity workouts every single day, that's going to be a problem. If you are doing a HIIT class once or twice per week, that's not going to be a problem. Again, short duration builds resilience. Your body is going to be able to respond to stress better. And the irony is, if you're worried about spiking your cortisol every morning and spiking it throughout the day, this is only going to add to your stress. So take a beat. Not all stress is bad. Yes, delaying your caffeine in the morning, that is something I do support, but for different reasons. You still want to have that natural cortisol spike in the morning. Like I said, that's gonna be what wakes you up. But anyways, let's get into the second thing I could not care less about when it comes to weight loss, and that's low sodium diets. If low sodium is something that you're fixated on, if every time you go to buy something, you're checking the salt content, you're missing the point. Now, for the average person in the Western world who's eating a lot of processed food, it's not that you're eating too much sodium. Sodium gets a bad rep, but it's not actually the cause of hypertension or anything else. Yeah, you are gonna be getting a lot of sodium in through your diet just because you're eating a lot of processed food and there is a lot of sodium in it. But again, sodium is the scapegoat. Most hypertension cases are actually caused not by high sodium, but by insulin resistance. And as insulin sensitivity starts to improve, then high blood pressure starts to come down and become more regular. And that's independent of how much salt you're consuming. There's a lot more nuance to it than that. But for today's purposes, I know a lot of people who follow my channel, a lot of people in my community, my clients, they're eating a mainly whole foods diet. And when you cut out processed food, or when you cut out a lot of processed food, then you actually don't get that much sodium into your diet naturally. And sodium, even though it's been demonized, it is actually an essential electrolyte. You do need it to function day to day. It's essential for hydration, nerve function, muscle function. Without it, if you're exercising, and especially in the heat, you can get muscle cramps, fatigue, you can get dizzy. If you don't have enough sodium in your system, you can't recover properly. And that can be exercise recovery, but that can just be general recovery day to day. So a lot of people, when they first switch to a whole food diet, when they're eating maybe a few less carbs, maybe they've gone full keto, but doesn't have to be. As long as they're eating mainly whole foods, they're not getting a lot of sodium in. And this can manifest as headaches, fatigue, like I said, muscle cramps, cramps in calves, that sort of thing. And it can be really hard to get over that mental barrier of adding more salt into your diet, salting your food more generously, even adding salt to your water. But let me tell you, if you are not feeling 100% on a low carb, a whole food diet, up your salt. That can make such a huge difference, and that is one of the top mistakes I see people making. And I've had a bit of personal experience with this. My dad has had a heart attack in the past, and he's been told to lower sodium. And I've been with him before. It's been a little bit frustrating where he'll be looking at bags of chips and checking which one has less sodium. And I'm like, you're still reaching for a processed food. You're still reaching for something that is... And it's just the irony that what he is fixated on is the salt content, and either way, he's going to be eating a bag of chips. I don't know. That can be a little bit of a disconnect that's hard to work through with people. The third thing I could not care less about when it comes to weight loss is hitting a fiber goal. Listen, fiber does have its place. It can help to slow down how quickly you digest food. It can help to reduce blood sugar spikes. But the truth is, fiber is actually a non-essential nutrient. And I'm not just saying that it's non-essential as something I've just decided. It is non-essential by definition. There are essential nutrients and there are non-essential nutrients. So everything that's essential, we need to get through our diet because our body either can't make enough of it or can't make any of it at all, but we do require it. Nutrients that are non-essential, our body can either make them or we don't require them. Fiber falls into the non-essential category. And the truth is, because let me tell you, there is some research showing that fiber helps with digestion, fiber decreases disease risk, fiber can help with weight loss, etc. But the thing is, with these studies, they're done on groups of people who are already eating a highly processed diet. So of course, when they start adding more fiber in, that means they're eating more whole foods. So they're swapping processed foods for whole foods. The fiber isn't necessarily where the benefits are coming from. Most of the benefits are coming from eating more whole foods in general. And that doesn't have to be fruits and vegetables with fiber. That can be meat, seafood, eggs, dairy. Of course, if your diet is filled with refined carbs and oils and you start eating more foods with fiber, you're gonna feel better. Your health is gonna improve. That's a no-brainer. But aiming for arbitrary fiber goals each day, this can actually cause more harm than good. Because here's the thing, we actually can't digest fiber. It goes through our system undigested. And that's why it adds bulk to our stools. If we eat less fiber, and that's what we see with people who eat a carnivore diet, they're not eating any fiber, they have less bowel movements just because they don't have that fiber that they're digesting and that's going through their system. It's not coming in, so it's not going out. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. You can absorb more of your foods when you're eating meat, fish, and eggs. There's less waste. I'm not trying to demonize fiber because, like I said, it does have a time and a place. And in the past, I have had a bit of a stronger stance on this. Now, I do find that most people, clients I work with, do better when they're eating around 15 grams of fiber. Again, this isn't a hard rule, a number that you should be aiming for every single day. But when you eat too much fiber, it can cause constipation because, like I said, you're not digesting it. It's just going through your system. And if you're eating a lot of it all at once, it can really slow down digestion. So find the sweet spot for yourself. But for a lot of people, like I said, if you're eating mainly whole foods, if you have a protein source at the center of your meal, and then you're adding fruits and vegetables and healthy fat, this all falls into place. You don't need to be aiming for a specific fiber goal every day. The fourth thing I could not care less about when it comes to weight loss, and this one might be a little controversial, is avoiding blood sugar spikes at all costs. And I know you're probably like, you talk about blood sugar spikes all the time. I do. And listen, in isolation, blood sugar spikes, they're normal. For someone who is metabolically healthy, whose insulin is working properly, and their cells are sensitive to insulin, this is totally fine. But where blood sugar spikes become a problem is when they happen frequently and when they happen often. When we are constantly eating high carb, high sugar refined foods throughout the day, when we're not leaving much time in between meals, and our blood sugar staying high or insulin staying high, that's when our cells become less sensitive to insulin. And once we've gotten to that point, then we do need to be a little bit more mindful of blood sugar spikes. But that doesn't mean that we need to stop them entirely. I see so many people get absolutely obsessive with wearing a CGM and keeping their blood sugar flat. Is this helpful? Yes. But is one blood sugar spike every once in a while gonna kill you? No. So there is a balance here. I do hate to use the word balance. I do think it has been a little bit tarnished, but there is a balance here. What matters isn't the spike, it's the patterns. So CGMs, they can be a great tool. I'm not anti-CGM by any means, but wear them for a couple of weeks, wear them for a month, learn how your body responds to food. Learn what changes you can make. If that means the order that you eat your foods in, if that means pairing carbs with protein and fat. Learn about how you can eat to keep your blood sugar stable, reduce spikes, but not avoid them entirely. One spike by itself, it's not dangerous. Don't beat yourself up. It's not the end of the world. And I guess this also falls into, or kind of leads into the point that you don't need to be perfect with your diet. One slice of cake at a birthday party, not going to derail your progress. That's another trap a lot of people fall into, is being super, super strict. Don't fall into that. Progress over perfection. You don't need to be perfect. Just do as many little things right as you can, as often as you can. And that's what's gonna add up to big results. Okay, and quick break because I have a new segment that's starting on the podcast. Welcome to The Sip with Sodii. This is where I remind you to stay hydrated and I answer one of your questions from the last podcast episode. Today's question is from Array860. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. And because I chose your question, Sodii is gonna send you one box of their everyday hydration salts. If you want a chance to win and also get your question answered next week, make sure to leave it down below with the hashtag #TheSipWithSodii. So Array asks, how much protein is needed when doing intermittent fasting and only having one meal a day or a 24 fasting window? This is a great question and one that I get constantly. And here's the honest answer. It is really hard to get enough protein in when you're only eating one meal a day or when you're eating in a very small window, like 4 hours. If you guys have watched previous episodes on my channel, you will know that I recommend aiming for 1 gram of protein per pound of your ideal body weight per day. So that can be anywhere from 120, 200, depending on your height, your weight, your sex. Because technically, could you pack 150 grams of protein into one meal? Yeah, but that is a lot of protein to eat all at once. And because protein is so filling, that's gonna be extremely hard to eat. So there's a bit of nuance here. Generally, for most people, because I focus on building sustainable habits that you can stick to long term, because that's gonna lead to long-term results, I recommend eating 2 or 3 meals per day. When you're doing this, it's a lot easier to split your protein up and still reach your goals. But if you have a lot of weight to lose, if you are very sedentary, if you are extremely diabetic and you need to act fast, if you are doing a drastic fasting routine with the supervision of a doctor, then you're probably not going to hit this protein goal. And I mean, big picture here. If you have so much weight to lose that it is seriously impacting your health, then yeah, sticking to a longer fasting window might work better for you and might help you drop the weight quickly. But if we're thinking long-term sustainable habits, generally I recommend switching to 2 or 3 meals per day. If you are set on only eating 1 and you want to hit your protein goal, then liquid forms of protein might work here. It's easier to drink calories than it is to eat them. So something like a quality protein shake, that can be added into your meal. And also duration matters too. If you're doing 1 meal a day, only 1 day a week, a couple days a week, if you're mixing it in here and there, then yeah, you might not hit your protein goal on that specific day, and that's okay. Again, we want to look at patterns, what we're doing over time, and not one-off instances. But hitting our protein goal is so important because, especially if we're trying to lose weight, we really want to hold on to all the muscle that we have. And that is something that a lot of people, a mistake that they make when they're losing weight, they're not getting enough protein, they're dropping weight, but a lot of that is muscle. And that impacts your metabolic health. That's going to make it harder to maintain your results over time. And that's also going to impact your health in different ways. So I'd recommend prioritizing protein, trying to get it in 2 or 3 meals. If you can't, add in a protein shake. But at the end of the day, you know what's working for you. Are you progressing towards your goals? Are you getting the results you're looking for? Then keep doing what you're doing. All right, well, I hope that helped. So thank you again to Sodii for sponsoring this segment. And again, if you want your question answered next week and a chance to win a pack of everyday hydration salts, leave your comment down below with the hashtag #TheSipWithSodii. Now let's get back to the episode. Number 5 is 30-day challenges. These drive me absolutely crazy. I'm pretty sure I've seen studies before that the results from these challenges never last because people are so strict for a short period of time, they can't maintain it. And I'm sure you're starting to see a bit of a trend here. Anything that you can't maintain long-term, I'm not a fan of. Because what's the point? If you go on a crash diet, if you quit sugar for 30 days, if you do a workout challenge for 30 days, don't we want to lose weight and keep it off long term? We're not going to be able to exercise 365 days of the year. Sure, we might be able to do 30 in a row and we might get some results, but is it worth it if we rebound and regain the weight afterwards? Short-term challenges produce short-term results. So stop doing them. You're actually making it harder on yourself. Focus on smaller changes that you can maintain long-term. Set up an exercise schedule and routine that you can maintain, that you enjoy. The next one is aiming for 10,000 steps every day. This one is fun because a lot of people don't even know where this 10,000 number came from. It wasn't based on science. It wasn't based on a study. It was based on a Japanese pedometer that was made in, I think, the 1960s. And for whatever reason, it was called the 10,000 step meter. Now, do I think having a goal like this can be good for motivation and to get people moving? Yes, absolutely. And that is why I'm a little bit, okay, I won't be so hard on this one. But how many of us, I know I've been guilty of this, have reached the end of the day, we're only at 8,000 steps, and then we're pacing around our house when we should be winding down for the night and focusing on recovery and sleep? I am definitely guilty of this. And why? Why is 10,000 this magic number? Yes, should we all be walking and moving as often as we can throughout the day? That definitely can help to improve your metabolic health, help with blood sugar control, insulin sensitivity. Walking is great, but aiming for an arbitrary number and trying to hit it every single day, what's the point? Okay, I absolutely polished that off. I was clearly very thirsty. Sodii's everyday hydration salt is made for the average person. It contains the perfect blend of electrolytes for everyday use, and there's 0 added sugar. It's Australian made, high quality, and tastes delicious. Salty pineapple is my current fave. Next up, number 7, that I couldn't care less about when it comes to weight loss is cleanses, detoxes, or resets. Your body already has a detox system. Doing these cleanses or these detox plans, it is honestly just a gimmick. Sure, You might feel better from, I guess, giving your digestion a break. That is one of the big benefits of intermittent fasting for sure. But your liver is always detoxing. You don't need to do a juice cleanse that costs you $50 a day. You don't need a powder that promises to flush toxins. Save your money. If you want to do a reset, do a 24-hour fast, do a 48-hour fast, even a 72-hour fast. These done periodically, monthly, quarterly, or even yearly can actually have some resetting benefits. But guess what? That is entirely free. You don't need to buy anything. Detox teas, celery juice, skip all that. Save your money. Next up, and this one kind of goes hand in hand with 30-day challenges, is 75 hard. Now, if you aren't familiar, this is supposed to be a pretty intense, I guess, fitness, weight loss, health challenge. Basically, for 75 days, I think the rules are you're supposed to do 2 workouts a day. You're supposed to choose a diet and stick to it. You're supposed to drink a certain amount of water. I think you're supposed to read a couple pages of a book every single day. No alcohol. I'm sure there's one other rule that I'm missing. Maybe it's 10,000 steps, something along those lines. But this is crazy. Working out twice a day, I know that one of those workouts can be a walk or can be low intensity, but not giving yourself any rest days for 75 days, I was going to say 3 months, almost 3 months, that's crazy. And we spoke about avoiding cortisol spikes and how in isolation, they're not a problem. If you are doing 75 hard, I can almost guarantee your cortisol is going to be chronically elevated. And again, what you're doing for those 75 days, you're not going to be able to maintain forever. So sure, might you finish the 75 days and feel amazing, look amazing? Yeah, that might happen. But let me tell you, day 76, how many people have a cheat meal that day? And one cheat meal can get you back into some pretty bad habits. The next thing I couldn't care less about when it comes to weight loss is perfect macros. If it fits your macros, this used to be a huge thing a few years ago. I'm sure there's still some people who are following this. And even eating a low carb or keto diet, people will ask me all the time what their macros should be. Look, this is the way I think about it. Macros, are they important? I mean, macros themselves aren't really important. Protein you need, fat you need, carb, like fiber, is actually a non-essential nutrient. There is no form of carbohydrate that you actually require for good health. Again, does this mean they have no benefits? Does this mean you should avoid all carbs, full stop? No, you don't have to. Again, we want to be forming habits we can maintain. And for a lot of people, cutting out carbs entirely, that's not sustainable. My approach when it comes to macros is focusing on protein, adding healthy fat, and then adding fruits and vegetables, which are carbs. So you start by making sure you have at least 30 to 50 grams of protein at the center of every single meal. You choose a healthy cooking fat, ghee, butter, olive oil, ghee. I said ghee twice. Tallow is what I meant. Avocado oil. Now I'm losing track. Basically anything that's high in saturated fat or monounsaturated fat is going to be what you want to reach for. From there, you can add fruits and vegetables. They can be starchy, they can be non-starchy. I mean, if you want faster results, then choosing non-starchy vegetables and low sugar fruit, that would be the move. You still can get great results with starchy vegetables and higher sugar fruit as long as you're balancing it with protein and fat. Just personal preference here. And then add more fat. So top your steak with butter, drizzle your salad with olive oil, that sort of thing. If you're still hungry in between meals, look at your protein first, up that. If that's already between 30 and 50 grams, then add some more fat. If you do this, your macros are gonna fall into place naturally, and so will your calories. Trust me, give this a try, and you're never gonna have to count another macro or calorie ever again. Okay, and I think I've lost count, but I believe I'm at number 10. So the final thing I couldn't care less about when it comes to weight loss is eating 6 small meals per day. Now, a common misconception is that you want to eat small, frequent meals to keep your metabolism up. If you go long stretches of time, your metabolism's gonna slow down and you're gonna gain weight. And this is a huge misconception and actually the opposite of what really happens. Your metabolism slows down when you restrict calories over a long period of time, not because you eat infrequently. And this is why I recommend eating 2 to 3 meals per day. This allows you to get enough protein and get enough energy for your needs while still progressing towards your results. If you eat 6 times per day, then we fall into the trap where we're having those constant blood sugar spikes, where blood sugar remains high in between meals and insulin remains high. That's not what we want. So it's not always less is better. As we talked about earlier when we answered the question in the sip with Sodii, OMAD, probably not the best approach for everyone. 2 to 3 meals per day probably is. When we start getting into 4, 5, 6, it gets a little bit iffy. Now, can that work for some people? Absolutely. If you are an athlete, if you are working out multiple times per day and you have high energy needs, then yeah, you need to be eating more. You need to be eating more frequently. But for today's purpose, we're talking about weight loss, which oftentimes ties in with insulin resistance. So small frequent meals, not what we want. But anyways, guys, I'm going to wrap this episode up here. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Healthy Not Complicated podcast. Let me know in the comments down below, either on YouTube or Spotify, what weight loss trend you could not give a about. I'm curious to hear what you guys have to say. And remember, if you have a question for me that you want answered in the next episode and a chance to win a pack of Sodii's everyday hydration salts, make sure to leave that down below with the hashtag #TheSipWithSodii. Thanks again to Sodii for sponsoring this video. And look who just came in to say hi. It's actually Maisie's birthday today. What do you have to say? Oh, okay. Happy birthday. Thanks, guys. See you next time.